In Guatemala, thousands of indigenous communities gather in the north of Alta Verapaz to reorganize the struggle against monocrops. In Brazil, the death toll resulting from heavy rains and landslides in Petropolis rose to 176. Kremlin authorities said there were no plans yet for a new summit between U.S. President Joe Biden and the President Putin. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Guatemala, dozens of indigenous communities gather in the north of Alta Verapaz to reorganize the struggle against the monocrops. Members of the Guatemalan Indigenous Association, Madre Tierra, reiterated that they continue their organized resistance to the national corporations. Through a release, the indigenous organization expressed that under no circumstances should the national government and private companies consider large-scale monocrop as a source of renewable energy. They also denounced that the expansion of palm oil crops has caused the expropriation of land from indigenous communities, the privatization of water resources, and the increase in the contamination of soils and ecosystems due to the high use of pesticides and agrochemicals. We move on to North America to update the information on the migratory crisis. As Sunday, over 5,000 migrants were intercepted in the country. The National Institute of Migration said that the 5,000 migrants arrested, including 793 minors, were irregularly passing through the national territory. Although the agency did not detail how the operations were carried out, since Thursday they had already confirmed the arrest of more than 1,200 migrants in just 24 hours. Detainees come from 23 nations, most of them from Central and South America, but also from Nepal, China, Senegal, Russia, India, Romania, Switzerland, and Gambia. The arrests, described as rescues, are the reflection of the unprecedented migratory flow that the sub-region lives. Over 114,000 foreigners have been expelled from Mexican territory during the same period. The facilities of the Special Unit of the National Police, where since Tuesday the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, has been detained, have been reinforced. The announcement was reported by the National Police in a message on social networks. The director of the unit, Miguel Perez, pointed out that security has been reinforced to protect the physical integrity of the former president, who on January 27th concluded his second consecutive term after 4 years in power. He also said that security is part of a strategic plan due to the high responsibility represented by the custody of Hernandez, who doesn't have access to telephones and is only receiving visits from his closest relatives and his lawyers. The former head of state faces an extradition request by the United States on drug trafficking and weapon charges. This Sunday, the executive of the Dominican Republic started the construction of a wall of approximately 160 kilometers on the border with Haiti, with the aim of stopping migration and the smuggling of goods. The fence will cover more than half of the 392-kilometer border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and also will be 3.9 meters high. According to the presentation made by the authorities at the inauguration ceremony, the construction will have 170 watchtowers and some 71 access gates. Humanitarian organizations have warned that nearly 40% of the Haitian population requires humanitarian aid, and almost 500,000 citizens in that country live without access to running water in a crisis severely aggravated after the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021.
Early last year, I announced to the nation our decision to initiate the process for the construction of a smart fence on our border with Haiti, driven by the need to ensure our national security, regulate the migratory flows, and protect all citizens by guaranteeing their rights and obligations. At that time, I met with the relevant state bodies and with serious experts to analyze the situation at the border and to work together to draw up a roadmap that would lead us to complete the process. We took into account opinions on how to approach this great project, and since last March I announced that the construction of the fence was in the planning stage. Today I'm meeting with you again to begin the definitive construction work that we had announced after months and the respective tender process. As you are well aware, the serious institutional and security crisis that our neighboring country is going through has led the people to a worrying situation of political and social instability as well as huge economic and food crisis, and we have expressed several times and in different places that it must be overcome by Haitians themselves and attended to by the entire international community.
Human rights defenders in Haiti demanded on Sunday respect for the rights of the textile workers, who have asked for a wage increase and have repeatedly denounced police repression in recent demonstrations in the capital, Port-au-Prince. In a press release, defenders recalled that the situation in the country has been worsening as the price of the basic food basket increases. For this, textile workers have been demanding a salary increase of 1,500 gourds, equivalent to about $14.7, but demonstrations have been strongly repressed, leaving at least 13 injured. The statement rejects aggressions against peaceful protests and also indicates that demands for improvements in labor are a constitutional guarantee. The coordinator of the National Center of Haitian Workers, Dominique Sendeloy, confirmed that he will meet with the government in order to reach a stable agreement. Colombia's population supports the Pacto Histórico coalition during its election campaign. According to polls, Pacto Histórico is the political party preferred by the voters. This organization is aiming to renew the bicameral Congress on the 13th March, as well as the presidential elections to be held on the 29th of May. So far, people are participating in proselytizing activities in different territories of the nation, led by the presidential pre-candidate Gustavo Petro. Among the most important proposals of the historic pact is to achieve free public health care financed by the state, to achieve free quality education, and an employment policy that guarantees decent pay, stability, and social security. Meanwhile, in Chile, presidential handover and power transfer procedures started with just over 2 weeks to go before the president-elect Gabriel Boric takes office. The meetings between the delegations for the transfer of presidential powers will extend until March 11th, the date for the swearing-in of the president-elect Gabriel Boric. During his time, the authorities will evaluate the challenges that Boric will face during his term: the migratory crisis on the northern border with Bolivia and the militarization of the south, where there is a territorial conflict between large forestry companies and the Mapuche indigenous people, are some of the issues that will be discussed at the meetings. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. In the southeastern Brazilian city of Petropolis, the grilling rescue work continues, and in the last few hours, more bodies have been recovered, bringing the death toll to 176. The heavy rainstorm that devastated part of the city has also left nearly 200 people injured, while the search for dozens of missing people continues. The storm has left a large-scale trail of destruction since Tuesday, making it the city's worst weather tragedy ever, according to the latest report from the city's police. In addition to the 176 dead, according to the latest fire brigade report, the civil police have a provisional list of 117 missing. It is precisely the search for life under the rubble that is keeping the rescue teams busy. In addition, in the last few hours, the civil defense gave a report confirming 775 incidents due to landslides. Wildfires that had been ravaging northern Argentina for several weeks advanced relentlessly on Sunday, although the recent rains that began over the weekend gave some hope to the firefighters. According to the latest report, Corrientes province is the most affected area, where officials said at least 8 separate fires continue to burn and had devastated at least 9% of its territory. The flames are consuming about 30,000 hectares a day in Corrientes, destroying almost 800,000 hectares so far. Strong winds, low humidity, and dryness from drought have helped the fires spread since mid-January. Forecasters said the rains that were falling since Sunday were expected to continue throughout the coming week. The Japanese government has suspended the transport in the north of the country due to heavy snowfall in the region. Air and rail transport on the island of Hokkaido has been almost completely cancelled due to heavy snowfall. According to the press, 70% of the trains in the city of Sapporo were suspended, as were 140 flights at New Shitose Airport. The bad weather also caused power outages, traffic congestion, and at least a dozen people were injured in the car accidents. Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesperson said on Monday that there were no plans yet for a new summit with the United States President Joe Biden, contradicting the claims by the White House, which had said that the leaders agreed in principle to meet. Speaking to reporters, spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said there were no concrete plans for a new Putin-Biden meeting, but there has no excluded the possibility, explaining that a gathering between both heads of state could be coordinated quickly if necessary. He also stated that dialogue between the Russian Foreign Ministry and the State Department could continue. Peskov also announced that Putin had called a large format meeting of Russia's Security Council on Monday and that he will hold calls with international leaders. And the government of Russia has prepared 43 regions to receive refugees from the self-proclaimed People's Republics of Donetsk and Lugansk. The announcement was made by the Ministry of Emergencies of Russia. In previous days, the Kremlin authorities indicated that they have the capacity to receive 1.5 million people on their territory. The Donbas residents have been evacuating the region en masse in buses to the Russian city of Rostov since last Friday, after leaders of Donetsk and Lugansk warned that the Kiev government was preparing an offensive against the region. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held bilateral talks in Moscow with his Syrian counterpart Faisal Mekdad. During the meeting, the parties discussed the development of the situation in and around Syria, as well as the prospects for a political settlement of the Syrian crisis, in particular the operation of the Astana former talks, as the agenda of the Syrian Constitutional Committee in Geneva. During the meeting, Lavrov said his country will not allow attempts to create confrontation between Russia and the West to negatively impact the strategic ties between Moscow and Damascus. Meanwhile, Mekdad stated his visit to the Russian capital constituted an opportunity to increase coordination between both countries in various fields of mutual interest, in addition to exchanging views of the latest developments in Europe and the Middle East. The Chinese government has decided to impose countermeasures on 2 United States military contractors, Raytheon Technologies and Lockheed Martin, over their long-time involvement in U.S. arms sales to the Taiwan region, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said on Monday.
In efforts to safeguard China's sovereignty and security interests, and in pursuant to the relevant provisions of China's anti-foreign sanctions law, the Chinese government has decided to impose countermeasures on U.S. military enterprises, Raytheon Technologies and Lockheed Martin, over their long-time involvement in U.S. arms sales to the Taiwan region. China once again urges the U.S. government and relative parties to stay committed to the One China principle and the 3 China-U.S. joint communiques, and stop arms sales to and military ties with the Taiwan region. China will continue to take all necessary measures according to the development of the situation to firmly safeguard its sovereignty and security interests.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Monday, Mali's lawmakers approved a plan allowing the military junta to rule for up to 5 years, despite regional sanctions imposed on the country over delayed elections. 120 members of Mali's 121-seat interim parliament voted to allow the junta to rule up for 5 years, in line with earlier junta proposal and without mentioning the date for democratic elections. After staging a coup in the impoverished Sahel state in August 2020, the junta initially announced elections for February 2022, but proposed a ruling extension in December, citing security concerns. In response, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, last month imposed a trade embargo and closed its borders with Mali. Also, tensions with the junta contributed to France's announcement last week that it was withdrawing its troops from Mali, which are deployed under the anti-jihadist Barkhane force in the Sahel.
The agenda of this extraordinary meeting focused exclusively on the examination of the draft law on the revision of the transition charter that we have just adopted almost unanimously by the members of the National Transition Council. It is a feeling of joy and pride when the occupying forces leave your territory. You can only rejoice and congratulate the patriotic courage of the authorities, especially the patriotic president's deliberated Assimi Goïta. When the Barkhane forces withdraw, it is the beginning of the end of the war in Mali, and when the occupying forces leave Mali, it is the beginning of the end of the war.
Protests broke out in several Moroccan cities on Sunday as people rallied against rising prices and to commemorate the 11th anniversary of demonstrations that called for reform. In the capital Rabat, dozens of protesters decried the high cost of basic goods and shouted slogans harking back to the February 20th movement. The pro-reform and anti-corruption movement erupted from the Arab Spring uprisings that rocked the Middle East in 2011. Dozens also rallied in Casablanca and Tangiers, according to videos posted on social media. Drought has hurt the country's economy, and Moroccans are also feeling the burden of high fuel prices. Some 3.8 billion dirhams, over $400 million, is needed for flood subsides alone in 2022, according to officials.
The state is engaging in a power struggle with Moroccan men and women and has affected their livelihoods. That is why we say to the Moroccan state, stop the unpopular policy that targets the pockets of Moroccans. I call for the dissolution of the government and parliament and a new constitution to draft a new party law. The problem in our country is that political parties have become a business. It is impossible to build a strong and just democratic state with parties and institutions that are plagued by corruption, tyranny, and injustice.
In Palestine, Israeli military arbitrarily arrests 40 citizens in the West Bank region. Media reported that on Monday, Zionist troops stormed several West Bank towns, including Al-Arqa, Al-Yamun, Deir Abu Mizal, Silwad, and Eta al-Zawiya in the Israeli-occupied territories in eastern Jerusalem, where they also attacked Al-Arub and Al-Fawar camps. 10 Palestinian citizens have already been arrested by the Israeli forces on the eve of the attack, using the same tactics. A Syrian army checkpoint stopped a United States military convoy on the eastern outskirts of Al-Hazakah, forcing it to retreat. The convoy, consisting of 4 armored vehicles, accompanied by a vehicle belonging to the militia of Qast, trying to pass through the village, but it was stopped by the residents. The U.S. military and its allies have been illegally present in northern Syria and also in the eastern region for a long time. And in addition to looting the country's oil and grain resources, they are taking action against Syrian residents and also forces in the region. Negotiating with the United States over a possible nuclear deal is not on the agenda of the Iranian negotiators in the Austrian capital of Vienna, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council Ali Shahmani said on Monday. The high government official stated the talks have been going on between Iran and Britain, China, France, France, Russia, plus Germany, and the representative of the European Union, and it will continue unchanged until a result is reached. He also said that the negotiations with the U.S. is not on the agenda because it will not be the source of any progress. Iran and the major world powers, with the United States indirectly involved, are currently negotiating in Vienna a bid to restore the 2015 nuclear deal, from which former U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew unilaterally in 2018 and reinstated the sanctions against Iran. An Iranian F-5 fighter jet crashed into a school compound in the northwestern city of Tabriz on Monday, killing 2 crew and a passerby. According to a local official, there were no casualties at the school since it was closed because of COVID-19 pandemic. Authorities said the plane crashed into an external wall in the city's central district of Munajim. The jet had been stationed at the Shahid Fakouri Air Base in Tabriz, and it was heading back from a training mission when it encountered a technical problem that prevented it from landing. The accident was followed by a huge fire, which required the intervention of the fire brigade on the spot. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.